God, my hips are huge.
Oh, please, I hate my calves.
At least you guys can wear halters. I've got man shoulders.
I used to think there was just fat and skinny. Apparently there's a lot of things that can be wrong on your body.
My hairline is so weird.
My pores are huge.
My nail beds suck. I have really bad breath in the morning.
Ew.
Reflected appraisal, or the looking glass self, states that infants first learn to see themselves through the eyes of others. Therefore, our very first impression of ourselves is completely reliant on what we perceive to be the opinions of others. Furthermore, social comparison gauges our abilities and qualities with respect to others. Both phenomenons are prevalent from childhood through later life and can either help or harm our self-image. This is demonstrated by the Clark doll experiments of 1939 and 2005. Society has formed constructs of what is good, what is bad, what is beautiful, and what is not. These children have preset definitions of these concepts, which later reflect on the way they view themselves.
Which doll is the black doll? And which one is the white doll?
That one.
Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because she's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Which doll looks most like you?
Like me?
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay.
That doll.
According to the reflected appraisal process, we come to see ourselves as significant others see us. This concept went largely unchallenged for the majority of the 20th century, until more recent studies concluded that such evidence has simply not been sufficiently demonstrated. So, does reflected appraisal bear a true significance regarding self-appearance? The study surveyed school children and college athletes in order to gauge how individuals perceive themselves and others. The study also measured how the opinions of others impacted the individual's prior perceptions. Reflected Appraisal and the Development of Self by Richard B. Felsen reviews this program of research using 3 postulates. Postulate 1. The self-concepts of individuals are based on the perceptions of how others are responding to them.
Postulate 1 is the most basic postulate of the 3. It deals with a person's response to their perceptions of what significant others think, not the actual opinion of these others. It is the most difficult postulate to understand due to the fact that self-appraisals may affect reflected appraisals. Projection, which is the tendency for people to attribute their own opinions to others, is the main problem in casually interpreting the correlations between self and reflected appraisals. For example, if a boy thinks he is smart and does not really know what his classmates think, his best guess may be that they have the same opinion as he does. Since both self-appraisals and reflected appraisals are subjective variables, they must be obtained from the respondent.
Postulate 2. Individuals' perceptions of others' responses toward them affect the actual responses of others toward them.
Postulate 2. Children were asked to 1. Rate their classmates, 2. Indicate how particular classmates would rate them, and 3. Indicate whether they had received favorable or unfavorable communication from their classmates. Actual results suggested that children had only a general vague impression of how their peers would rate them and were entirely dependent on previous communication, compared to guesses that the interactionisms were going to define responses. Essentially, what children thought people were thinking affected how the people were actually thinking.
Postulate 3. The actual responses of others will determine the way they see themselves.
Postulate 3 deals with the effects of actual appraisals, or what other people truly think, on self-appraisals, which is how we see ourselves. For example, if a boy thinks he is smart and his parent tells him he is not smart, that boy will see himself as no longer being smart, and his standard for intelligence will rise above his previous perception of it. To gain their participants, a questionnaire was distributed to 289 boys and 272 girls in the 4th through 8th grade classrooms. Children from 3 separate elementary schools and 1 middle school participated. In the questionnaire, self-appraisals were measured by the following question: how good-looking do you think you are? They were able to choose between less good-looking than most in the class, average-looking, or better than most in the class. Responses were coded 1, 2, and 3, respectively. The children were also asked to nominate the 3 best-looking boys in the classroom and to put a check next to the one that they thought was the best-looking out of those 3. They were then asked, are you one of the classmates that thinks he is the most good-looking? The same procedure was used to determine the best-looking girls in the class. It was also the procedure used to determine the 3 boys and 3 girls most liked by the respondent. The respondent also ranked them according to how well liked by the class they are. These affirmative responses were then summed to yield a measure of reflected appraisals of peers. The variable actual appraisals of peers was obtained by adding the number of times the child was named by the 6 classmates as one of the most 3 attractive. If a child ranked their classmates more than once, then the classmate's rating was counted more than once. In order to measure strangers' appraisals, they showed the top 6 children's school pictures to 48 children in grades 4 through 8 from another city. Each picture was rated by 12 students in the same grade as the child. 4th and 5th grade pictures were combined. These 12 student raters each worked separately and arranged the pictures they were given in 5 piles from the most good-looking to the least. The ratings were coded 1 to 5 and combined into a scale. Cronbach's alpha for the scale was 0.82. Cronbach's alpha is a measure of internal consistency, or how closely related a set of items are as a group.
The study found that for both boys and girls, perceived peer appraisals have a significant effect on their self-appraisals. The effects of actual peer appraisals on reflected appraisals was found to be not as significant. This just shows that children seem to be influenced by what they believed were their peers' appraisals, even though these perceptions of their peers are not very accurate. The study also found that for both boys and girls, the effects of strangers' appraisals on self-appraisals were not very significant. The only effect that these strangers' appraisals did seem to have was on how the boys perceived their peers' appraisals. This observation shows that boys are using these standards to guess how they might be rated by other people. Overall, self-perception using shared criteria does not seem to play a huge role in the growth of self-appraisals on physical attractiveness. On the other hand, strangers' ratings do seem to have some effects on peer appraisals. This observation shows that children do share some of the standards of these strangers. The children also use these standards to judge people, such as their classmates, but they do not use these standards to judge themselves.
The implications of this study show 2 things. 1, that peer pressure is in fact real. It doesn't matter the age, race, gender, or etc. This overwhelming societal power to create an unrealistic concept of self is detrimental to the mental stability and solidarity of our population. Next, our research question, which asked about the true significance of reflected appraisal as a factor in self-appearance, was answered with a rocky no. While in different circumstances the answer may change, our study did show that it was not a significant factor in either gender, but that the opinions of strangers did have a little bit more of an impact. This emphasizes our previously discussed concept of having an ingrained awareness of society's constant personal judgment. As far as the strengths and limitations, the main strengths were the fact that the study used 3 postulates as reference points, which gave it a much stronger framework to examine the methodology and results behind the work. They looked at both males and females, which was a very smart idea because the male perspective of self-image is often very much overlooked due to the overwhelming push for females to judge one another on their looks. Finally, the creators of this article and study, we're very open to new and more extensive work in the future, which gives us hope that further progress on the issue can be made. As far as limitations go, using 4th through 8th grade children and college football players was the weirdest possible grouping that we can imagine for this study. Though their reactions are undoubtedly important, this group doesn't give us a comprehensive look at a unified concept. Next, this study accounts mainly for the interactions between peers, coaches, and teachers. The family, or particular others, according to countless psychological researchers and experts over the years, is where children learn the great majority of their guidelines, and by excluding the external factors, a negative cross-cultural intolerance seems. In the future, it would be beneficial to examine A, the communication and judgments that are made when confrontation is involved, and B, a broader age group. For example, looking at specifically grades 1 through 5 to see the early developments of the concepts of self and the social comparison theories, versus focusing on grades 9 through 12 to look at exactly how far the societal and peer-induced pressures have gone. As a whole, it's important to advocate for a change in the status quo. We cannot allow such intolerance for different shapes and sizes to continue, and we cannot continue to construct one set model of beauty for any gender, race, culture, etc. The generalized other, built up of rules, roles, and attitudes endorsed by society, needs to be a better role model for all ages, genders, and body types alike. Fun fact: if Barbie were an actual woman, she would be 5 foot 9 inches tall, have a 39-inch bust, an 18-inch waist, 33-inch hips, and a size 3 shoe. She likely wouldn't menstruate, would fit the weight criteria for anorexia at 110 pounds, and would have to walk on all fours due to her proportions. But in 1965, Slumber Party Barbie was introduced. She came with a scale set at 110 pounds and a book entitled How to Lose Weight with One Instruction: Don't Eat. Take that, society.